Reborn on the day Chloe was caught shoplifting at the supermarket. This time, I didn't take her into the back room for a quiet talk. I called the police instead. My first love, Chloe, spent 3 days in detention. I used those 3 days to cut off every tie between us. From then on, whenever she organized a class gathering, I suddenly came down with something so serious I couldn't attend. If she went to Miami, I went straight to San Francisco. In short, Chloe planned an event, and I was too sick to show up. She enrolled in school, I dropped out. Any situation that might put me in contact with her, I avoided completely. In my last life, I loved her for 20 years. But in the 2 decades we were married, she never once treated me kindly. Until the day of the house fire. I kept her and our daughter outside the window, shielding them until help arrived. They escaped without a scratch. Every inch of my skin was burned. And yet, the daughter I had raised with my own hands clung to Chloe's first love, Ryan, and said, "He deserved it. Back then, he tore you and Mom apart, may he burn in hell." Chloe stood beside her, sobbing into Ryan's chest. "I almost thought I'd never see you again. That's how I died, choking on hatred. Back in this life, if you love Ryan so much, then I'll make sure you end up with him. Empty your bag. I didn't steal anything. It's all on the security footage. You're still denying it? Don't make us call the cops." The shouting dragged me out of sleep. I forced my eyes open, and froze at the sight in front of me. It was my parents' supermarket. Back then, in order for me to marry Chloe, they sold this store, this place that carried so many of my memories, and bought me a house in the city instead. I turned toward the commotion. 2 cashiers were glaring at a girl in a school uniform, voices sharp with accusation. And that girl was my former wife, Chloe. But this time, I didn't step in to shield her. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. "Hello? I need to report a theft. Someone's stealing from the store." The officers arrived quickly. After watching the surveillance footage and taking statements, they escorted Chloe away. She hadn't taken much, enough, the police said, to merit no more than 3 days in detention. Even Brian, one of the store clerks, looked uneasy. "Isn't this a bit much? She's still a student. A stern talking to would do. How's she supposed to go back to school after getting hauled off like that? This is the only way it'll sink in. Otherwise she'll never learn." With that, I turned and walked out of the supermarket without looking back. As I followed the familiar road, memories from my last life crept in. Chloe had come from a poor family. The first time I caught her stealing, I took her into the back room to ask her why. I told my parents afterward, and when they learned about her situation, they pitied her. They ended up sponsoring her until she graduated from college. I looked after her for years, like she was my own little sister. After graduation, at the urging of her disabled mother, Grace, I married her. I never imagined that the woman sleeping beside me all those years believed I had forced her into marriage, believed I had destroyed her chance at happiness with Ryan. Worse, under her influence, even my beloved daughter came to see me as the villain. The day of the fire, I dragged them both to safety, shielding them with my own body. My skin was burned beyond recognition. And yet, while I lay in the hospital barely clinging to life, they marveled that they had almost lost Ryan. At the very end, when all I wanted was for my wife and daughter to stay by my side a little longer, all I heard were their words cutting me open deeper than the flames ever had. "If you hadn't broken up Mom and Uncle Ryan all those years ago, none of this would have happened. Stop hanging around her, Mom has the right to chase her own happiness. Why don't you just die already? Stop trying to guilt-trip me with your so-called sacrifices. I'm sick of it. You use your kindness to shackle me. If Uncle Ryan hadn't warned me, I might have fallen for it again. This fire? Just another one of your pathetic sympathy plays. Two people I had loved with every fiber of my being, one grown, one still young, stood over my battered body and spat those words. Anger, despair, grief, until, at last, nothing. I lay there and watched them walk into another ward to tend to Ryan, who was there for nothing more than a cold. Finally, I let my eyes close. But God saw fit to give me another chance. And this time, I won't lift a finger for her. In the days Chloe spent in detention, I made sure to cut off every single thread that might connect our futures. In my last life, we had happened to get into the same university. This time, I changed course entirely, enrolling in a college in West Haven City instead. Every other possible overlap was neatly eliminated, one by one. My plan was to tie up all the loose ends within those 3 days, then leave with my parents for a trip. But the day after her arrest, I saw her again, at a class reunion. I guessed Grace must have paid her bail. Word of Chloe's arrest had already spread, everyone knew she'd been caught stealing. At the reunion, most of our classmates couldn't help glancing at her with thinly veiled judgment. None of that concerned me. It wasn't until I met her eyes, brimming with hatred, that I realized something else. Chloe had been reborn, too. The room buzzed with talk about our future college lives. The food hadn't even arrived when the private room's door swung open. A bleach-blonde kid with a hard stare stormed in. "Ethan, what the hell is your problem?" It was Ryan, Chloe's golden boy from the past, a good-for-nothing delinquent. I gave him a flat glance and didn't bother answering. From the corner of my eye, I caught the sudden brightness in Chloe's gaze. And I couldn't help thinking back to the last 20 years of my former life. Chloe had never once looked at me with warmth. No matter what I did for her, no matter how much I gave for our family, her eyes stayed cold. Even on the day our daughter was born, all I saw in them was resentment. Back then, I didn't understand. I thought it was simply her nature. I told myself her hard life had robbed her of the ability to be happy. So I kept trying, bringing home gifts the moment I got my bonus, taking her and our daughter out whenever I could. But all I ever got in return was, "What's so great about that? Wouldn't it be better to have some peace and quiet?" The indifference in her eyes cut deeper than any blade. Maybe it was my silence that set him off, but Ryan suddenly grabbed me by the collar. "Didn't you hear me talking to you? Chloe's family is in trouble, her mom hasn't eaten in 3 days. If you're so worried about the money, I'll pay you back myself. She's our classmate. Why the hell are you being so heartless? Chloe only took a little food because she had no choice. And you want to slap her with a criminal record? What kind of person does that?" His eyes were bloodshot, his voice raw with anger. The words rippled through the room, sparking a low murmur among our classmates. I heard Chloe's dad ran off, and her mom's bedridden. Guess that explains it. Still, stealing isn't right. What would you do if your mom was starving and you had no way to earn money? Listening to their whispers, I felt a coldness settle deep inside me. They would never understand. In my last life, I'd thought Chloe's misfortune was reason enough to help her. I had my family support her for years. And only when the flames were closing in did I realize. Not everyone is worth saving. I ignored the buzz of voices around me and spoke flatly. "All right, then. Pay me back." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. The chatter stopped instantly. Chloe's face drained of color. She jumped to her feet and stepped between us, forcing Ryan back. "Ethan, I'm sorry about what happened before. Let's just not bring it up again. After today, we won't be seeing each other anymore." I glanced at her, my tone unreadable, and said nothing. That deliberate emphasis, "we won't be seeing each other anymore," was all the confirmation I needed. Chloe had been reborn, too. Perfect. 20 years of cold silence had already taught me the truth. Some hearts can't be warmed. And hers? Not only was it frozen, it had the power to chill everyone around her. In my last life, even my daughter, the girl I cradled in my hands and shielded from the world, turned on me because of a few poisoned words from her mother. One cake from Ryan, and she was his. Never mind that she couldn't eat much cream, none of them cared. All they cared about was that I had torn them apart. If that's the love they wanted, I wouldn't stand in their way this time. Chloe, you don't have to be afraid of him, Ryan sneered. Let everyone here see his true colors. Someone who can watch a classmate's mom starve and refuse to help. I wouldn't dare get close to a person like that, who knows when he might swallow us whole. As he spoke, his gaze swept the room. The looks my classmates gave me shifted, sharp with quiet judgment. Chloe's eyes burned with contempt and loathing. Chloe's had it so rough, someone murmured. She's so strong. I knew things were hard for her, but she never complained. You could have told us sooner, Chloe. We're classmates, we would have helped. Don't worry, Chloe. You're amazing. You'll get through this. Yeah, don't be afraid of someone that heartless. We're here. No one's going to believe his lies. The room swelled with righteous indignation, as if I were the villain in all of this. And yet, in my last life, I had funded her through 4 years of college. I had cared for her for 2 decades. What exactly had I done wrong to deserve the ending they gave me? A single tear slid from the corner of Chloe's eye. Thank you, everyone. Her delicate face lit up with an expression so vivid, so alive, it was almost theatrical. An expression I had never once seen directed at me. No matter what I did for her in the past, Chloe's face had always been an ice mask. I didn't bother watching their little performance. I didn't want to tangle with them anymore. Once this meal was over, I intended to let the past die completely. But some people weren't willing to let it go. Ethan, you've got the nerve to sit there and keep eating? Ryan's voice sharpened. The noise was grating, needling at my patience. So what you're saying, I replied, is that stealing is fine? What are you, some kind of animal? No compassion at all? Sure, stealing's wrong, but do you have to lecture her when her family's in this situation? And now it wasn't just Ryan. Classmates around the table pushed back their chairs, stepping in on Chloe's behalf. Ethan, I thought you were decent these past 3 years, but you're no better than a beast. Cold-blooded. Yeah, you're nothing but a vulture. Your family's the wealthiest in class, but while everyone else is willing to help Chloe, you act like whether she lives or dies has nothing to do with you. You've saddled her with a criminal record, how's she supposed to live now? It's disgusting being in the same class as someone like you. I listened to their voices, slow and steady, drawing in a long breath. Then I turned my head toward Chloe. Her eyes were fixed on me, brimming with pride, as if she finally had the upper hand. It was the look of someone who felt untouchable now that she had people backing her. I set my chopsticks down. Then let me say a few words. What could you possibly have to say? Do you even deserve the floor? Yeah, let's hear what kind of crap can come out of a heartless bastard like you. I let my gaze sweep the room before settling, one last time, on Chloe. For a brief second, she faltered, her eyes darting away. But then Ryan's hand closed around hers. With that, her chin lifted again, her stare hardening, as if daring me to try. I shook my head, deciding it was better to lay everything bare. When Chloe was taken away, I went to bring her mother, Grace, some food. All these years, whenever Grace came to the store, I never charged her a dime, sometimes I'd even find excuses to send her home with more. And ever since high school, Chloe has been taking things from my family's supermarket. I never said a word. But she kept pushing the line. It wasn't just school supplies anymore, it was food, household goods, and sometimes even small pieces of jewelry. Like the one Ryan's wearing around his neck right now. Since Ryan's offered to pay me back, there's security footage and proof. Come by the store sometime and settle it. As for why I called the police, she's about to head to college. A habit like stealing can't be carried into the future. If you all think I was wrong, then let's not see each other again from now on. And especially you, Chloe, I hope you and Ryan have a good life together. I rose from my seat without haste, pushed open the door, and walked out. The private room fell into dead silence. What I'd just said carried too much weight, more than anyone could brush off. Too much to assume I was bluffing or lying. Because every claim I made could be checked with the smallest bit of effort. If I'd been lying, it would have been stupid in the extreme. And I'd mentioned security footage. Chloe's eyes flushed red, hatred spilling out of them unchecked. Ryan's face, on the other hand, had gone an ugly shade, dark, tight, and utterly unsmiling. But none of this had anything to do with me anymore. When I'd spoken earlier, it was only to shift my classmates' perception, nothing more. Connections are still connections, no need to burn them all. Besides, in a short while I'd be heading off to West Haven for school. As for Chloe, I hoped she'd enjoy life with her bleach blonde delinquent. Ryan's family wasn't much better off than hers. He was a thug with no grades, no ambition, and no desire to change. The idea of them having a good future together was laughable. But Chloe, she saw Ryan as someone who understood her, who fought for her, her white knight. She'd held on to that fantasy for 20 years. This time around, I wanted to see just how far her prince could take her. The next few days were quiet. Ryan didn't dare show his face at the supermarket to settle his debt, something I had predicted from the start. But even if Chloe and Ryan stayed away, Grace eventually came. I heard Chloe's been taking things from your store without paying, she said softly. Her head hung low, her body drawn in on itself, the limp in her step making her look even smaller, more fragile. Carefully, she pulled out a wad of crumpled bills from the cloth pouch she carried everywhere. Chloe's not a bad kid. It's my fault I couldn't give her a better life. However much she owes you, I'll pay it back. I looked at Grace, the woman who, in my last life, had been nothing but kind to me, and my chest tightened. No matter how Chloe had treated me back then, Grace had always shown me warmth. Whenever she heard I was coming home, she'd rise before dawn, limp to the market, and buy armfuls of fresh ingredients. Then she'd spend hours in the kitchen, working alone to set out a table full of dishes for me. The thought that, from now on, we might have no place in each other's lives weighed heavier than I expected. And I couldn't help wondering how this elderly woman, scraping by on welfare and what little she could earn from sewing, was going to survive the years ahead. I quickly reached out to steady her. You don't need to do this. It's a small amount, I don't care about the money. I'm just saying. Chloe's about to start college. It's not a good habit to carry forward. These days, even in college, you can work part-time. If she puts in a little effort, she might even be able to help with expenses. Before long, you two could have a better life. As I spoke, I pulled out the food I'd already prepared for her. To celebrate Chloe getting into college, let me take these back for you. Knowing I wouldn't be giving them anything again, I made sure to pack plenty. More than Grace could possibly carry on her own. No, Ethan, I can't just take your things for free, Grace said quickly, backing away and waving her hands. I sighed again. Grace was the kind of woman who repaid every kindness. How had she ended up raising a daughter like Chloe? In the end, after some gentle insistence, I managed to convince her and walked the food over to her house. I'd thought this would be the last time we had any contact. But when I arrived, I ran straight into Chloe and Ryan, coming home hand in hand without the slightest attempt at discretion. The moment Chloe saw me standing beside her mother, her gaze iced over, a frost forming in her eyes. Still holding Ryan's hand, she strode over, yanked Grace behind her, and fixed me with a glare sharp enough to cut. What are you doing here? I looked at her without the faintest ripple in my chest. After 20 years, I knew exactly what kind of woman she was. And now, her opinion of me meant nothing at all. Because no matter what I did, she always believed there was an ulterior motive. That everything was just another scheme to tear her away from the man she truly loved, Ryan. I set the bag of food down gently, my voice even. The groceries are here. I'll be going now. I turned to leave. It was time to cut ties with Chloe for good. Wait. Ryan's voice rang out behind me, laced with a mocking edge. Ethan, drop the act. You just want to play the good guy in front of Grace, don't you? Well, newsflash, Chloe's not falling for it anymore. I paused, glanced back at him, and decided he wasn't worth the energy of an argument. Think whatever you want, I said flatly. But Ryan wasn't about to let it go. He closed the distance in a few quick strides, planting himself in my way. What? Did I hit a nerve? Got nothing to say? You think these little gestures will win her back? Chloe will never like you. You think flashing a bit of your daddy's money is enough to make her fall for you? Keep dreaming. And showing up here, buttering up her mom like this, it's pathetic. Makes my skin crawl. I couldn't help but laugh under my breath at his bluster. All right then, why don't you pay back what she owes? That shut him up fast. I knew exactly what he was, a two-bit thug. The only thing he and Chloe had in common was that neither of them came from much. And somehow, that alone was enough for her to decide he was her soulmate. Seeing Ryan's face flush crimson from being cornered by a single sentence, Chloe finally couldn't sit still. She looked at me coldly, her voice flat. Ethan, you just want to ruin my reputation, don't you? That's fine. In a little while, I'll be taking my mom and Ryan to live in another city. For the rest of this life, you'll never see me again. I couldn't help but laugh. First of all, where you go has nothing to do with me. If you weren't always scheming in the background, do you think I'd even bother speaking to you? Her expression twisted with anger, but I couldn't care less anymore. I think I should remind you, when I brought food to Grace, I didn't even know you. And if it weren't for this idiot next to you constantly provoking me, I wouldn't have bothered to bring up the things you've done. And now you've got the nerve to stand here and talk like that to me? I let my voice drop to something calm and cutting. Chloe, since you want to hear it, I'll tell you. You're nothing but a useless waste. You really think a pretty face makes you some kind of goddess? I turned as if to leave. That was when both Chloe and Ryan snapped. Ryan shot to his feet, fury in his eyes, and swung a fist at me. But I'd been expecting it. I sidestepped easily, caught his arm mid-swing, and twisted hard. He yelped and went down in a heap, groaning in pain. Ethan! What the hell are you doing? Chloe shouted, rushing to Ryan's side and crouching over him, her face etched with worry. Watching her fuss over him like that, I couldn't help but see another scene. One burned into my mind from my previous life. In my last life, no matter what sickness I had or how badly I was hurt, Chloe would only glance at me with that detached look and say, "If you're sick, go get treated. Don't be an eyesore here." When had she ever cared about anyone like this? A hollow laugh slipped from my lips. I was just about to walk away when Grace, limping, came to the doorway. Grace braced herself against the frame, her gaze falling on the disheveled Ryan and the furious Chloe. Her eyes reddened instantly. "Chloe, why are you still hanging around with this thug? Come here." Grace, usually so gentle, was angry. It struck me then that maybe, in my last life, her pushing Chloe to marry me had been her way of getting her daughter away from Ryan. "Mom! He's not a thug. Why do you insist on keeping me away from the man I love?" Chloe's eyes brimmed with tears. "Do you like that heartless man so much?" She jabbed a finger in my direction. "What kind of spell has he cast on you that makes you hate Ryan this much?" Her voice rose with each word until she was glaring at me outright. Grace looked as if she'd been struck by lightning. Her hands trembled as she reached out to her daughter, only for Chloe to recoil, her expression sharp with disdain. "Chloe, don't talk about Ethan that way," Grace pleaded. "He came to bring us food. All these years, we've relied on the kindness of his family. Bring us food?" Chloe's voice dripped with disbelief. Chloe let out a sharp, bitter laugh and turned her glare on me. "He's just here to watch me suffer. He's always putting on this fake, kind act so he can throw scraps at me. Mom, can't you see it? He's trying to buy your affection with these cheap little handouts, so that I'll feel indebted enough to marry him. And for what? A lifetime in exchange for a few bags of groceries, Mom." Her voice climbed higher, edged with hysteria. Even Grace looked momentarily stunned. "Why can't you see it? The only person who truly cares about me is Ryan. Ethan's just trying to make you force me to marry him." Ryan, still clutching the arm I'd twisted, staggered to his feet and shot me a murderous look. "Cut the fake charity crap. If you've got the guts, tally up every dime you've given us over the years. I'll pay you back if I have to sell everything I own." I arched a brow. "Fine. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. bring the silver chain you're wearing, yes, the one from the security footage, and we'll settle the bill at the supermarket." Then I gestured to the faint red marks circling Chloe's wrist. "And about you hitting her in that alley yesterday? I'll be reporting that to the police." Ryan's face drained of color. Chloe instinctively clutched her wrist and took 2 quick steps back. Grace's eyes went wide as she looked at her daughter. "Chloe, he hit you?" "Mom, don't listen to him." Chloe's voice cracked into a shrill scream, her gaze darting away. "He's just trying to stir things up between us. Ryan's never laid a hand on me, he treats me perfectly." Ryan's jaw was locked, his expression stone-dark, as he grabbed her arm. "Let's go. Don't waste your breath on this lunatic." My eyes fell again on the fresh red imprint his grip had left on her skin. And with the weight of the last life still in my mind, I found myself, letting go. "Then I wish you both a long and happy life together," I said quietly. I turned and walked away, Grace's muffled sobs and Chloe's furious shouting chasing me down the street. I knew this would be the last time I ever set foot in that narrow, memory-soaked alley. Whether Chloe could eventually convince Grace no longer mattered to me. Whatever happened to Chloe from here on out had nothing to do with me. As for Grace, I had already done everything I could for her. But I was the one who'd been wronged, and I wasn't about to throw myself back into that fire pit. The next day, just as I expected, Ryan never showed up at the supermarket to settle his debt. His words the night before had been nothing more than posturing, a performance for Grace's benefit. I knew exactly what he was, an uneducated street punk with nothing to offer. In my last life, I'd dug into him thoroughly in an effort to keep him away from Chloe and our daughter. Burglary, assault, theft, a criminal record as long as my arm. I'd laid it all out in front of Chloe, but she had refused to believe any of it. So this time, I'd let her experience it for herself. A month later, I returned from a family trip, tallying our finances and preparing for our move to West Haven. I was restocking the supermarket shelves when Grace limped in. Her eyes were swollen, her gaze skittish and heavy with worry. In her hand was a crumpled medical report, clenched so tightly it was nearly tearing. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaking, "Chloe, she's pregnant." Her breath hitched. "That bastard Ryan says he's taking her to another city to work. Chloe doesn't want to go to college anymore." Her tone was steeped in helplessness and despair. She glanced down at her leg, shame clouding her eyes. "This leg of mine," she murmured, as if the words themselves tasted bitter. I took the crumpled diagnosis slip from her hand with a calm glance. Pregnancy, 6 weeks. So even in this life, she'd already gotten involved with Ryan. I thought back to my last life, how Chloe had dropped out of college when she became pregnant, forced to marry me, her eyes full of nothing but disgust, and I almost laughed. How had I ever been so blind to what kind of woman she really was? Looking at Grace, so small and worn in front of me, I couldn't help but sigh. No matter what else could be said, in my last life she'd been my mother-in-law for over a decade, and she had always treated me well. I couldn't bring myself to cut her off completely. Grace. I stepped behind the counter, opened the safe, and pulled out an envelope. There's $10,000 here. It should help you with some of this. From now on, don't let Chloe have anything to do with Ryan. This is all I can do for you. For a family like mine, that sum wasn't much. She shook her head immediately. I can't take your money, absolutely not. But I saw the shadow in her eyes, the way her grief was threaded through with desperation. I knew she needed it badly. So I gave her an excuse. Then think of it as paying you in advance for all those cookies you've made me. I pressed the envelope into her hands. When I graduate and start earning, I'll still come by for dinner. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came out. Tears traced the deep lines time had carved into her face. At last, she took the envelope, eyes red, and turned for the door. But she paused, looking back. Ethan, don't blame Chloe. She grew up without a father, her personality was bound to go wrong. It's my fault. I didn't raise her well. For a moment, I couldn't tell if she was speaking of this life, or the last. I watched her limp away, and suddenly I was back in the flames of the fire from before, seeing her, leg dragging, trying to fight her way inside to reach me. My throat tightened, but in the end, all I said was, "Take care of yourself." 3 months later, the plane trees in West Haven began shedding their leaves. I was in the campus lab when I got the call from the police. Chloe had been detained for theft, and Ryan was on the run. I had no idea when the two of them had even come to West Haven. With no choice, I rushed to the station. When I arrived, Chloe was curled up in the corner of the holding cell. Her dress was torn, and her swollen belly was unmistakable. When she saw me, she suddenly smiled, wildly, almost feverishly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Ethan, are you proud of yourself? Seeing me fall this far?" I shook my head and held out a coat. "The child's innocent." To my surprise, she slapped the coat away with force. "Drop the act. You just want me to beg you, so you can chain me to you for life. I'm telling you, Ethan, you'll never get your wish." The fluorescent lights in the cell buzzed overhead, bleaching her face into a sickly pallor. I thought back to my last life, to the days after she'd given birth, her postpartum depression, the way I'd rush home after work to try and comfort her, only to be met with the same accusation over and over, murderer. Only now did I understand what she'd meant back then. She believed I'd killed Ryan's child. I looked at her steadily. "The only thing you've done right is calling me instead of your mother. Not letting her worry herself sleepless, that's the one decent choice you've made." Her eyes, wide and unhinged, held no effect on me now. Grace's health was fragile. If she knew her daughter had ended up like this, she might never sleep again. I wouldn't risk adding that burden to her. "I've found you a lawyer," I said evenly. "He'll be in touch later to handle this." I set down the file folder, along with an envelope containing $1,000 in cash. "2 final pieces of advice," I said. "First, stay away from Ryan. Second, stop stealing." The words had barely left my mouth before Chloe snapped, like a wire pulled too tight. "You just want to tear me and Ryan apart. That's all you ever want, to tear us apart." She lunged at me, nails raking across my cheek. As her fingers scraped skin, I caught the stench of her, sour, stale, and tinged with the metallic bite of blood. The officers pulled her off me in time, but in the struggle she stumbled and fell. A dark red stain began to spread beneath her. She was rushed to the hospital. With her life in danger, I had no choice but to call Grace. Outside the operating room, Grace wept so hard she nearly collapsed. I waited in the corridor as Ryan's mother stormed in, cursing under her breath, dragging along a snot-nosed little boy, Ryan's child with another woman. "If you can't afford kids, don't have them. You're just holding my son back from making money." She spat a shell onto the floor. "Losing the babies for the best, less dead weight for our family." Grace tried to charge at her, but I stepped in front and held her back. When the light above the operating room finally went dark, the doctor emerged to say the child hadn't survived. Chloe's first words upon waking were, "Where's Ryan? Why isn't he here?" I turned and walked out of the hospital. My phone buzzed in my pocket, an unfamiliar number sending me a photo. Ryan, arms slung around a blue-haired girl, cigarette smoke curling between them in some bar. My thumb hovered over the forward button, then slid up to delete it. Some roads, she'd have to walk to the very end on her own. In my senior year, while working at my internship, I met Nina. She always wore a crisp white blouse, and when she smiled, 2 dimples appeared on her cheeks, soft, unguarded, impossibly sweet. That Christmas, I brought her home for dinner. My mom was just stepping out to take the trash when a commotion erupted at the door. Chloe stumbled in, hair a tangled mess, a fresh welt blooming across her cheek. Behind her came Ryan, reeking of alcohol, his face twisted with rage. "You filthy whore, still thinking about this idiot, aren't you?" Chloe was covered in bruises, her body trembling, her voice barely there. "Ethan, help me. Please, save me." She dropped to her knees at my feet, eyes wide with terror as Ryan advanced on her, on us, step by deliberate step. In his hand, a fruit knife gleamed under the light. His eyes were wild, unhinged, his mind gone to some dark, unreachable place. Nina moved instinctively, placing herself between us. The moment the blade flashed, I shoved her aside. Agony tore through my palm as the knife drove in, the white-hot pain dragging me back to the fire, skin searing, nerves screaming. Something flickered in Ryan's eyes then, a brief, startled clarity. He bolted for the door, but the police, already closing in, tackled him to the ground. Blood dripped onto Nina's white blouse. She shook as she tried to wrap my hand, tears falling in heavy drops. And I found myself smiling. So this was what real care looked like, messy, frantic, clumsy, but utterly genuine. Ryan was sentenced to 10 years for aggravated assault. Chloe knelt before me, voice breaking with desperate repentance. "Ethan, I was wrong, I know I was wrong. Ryan's nothing but a worthless bastard. I see it now, you're the only one who's ever truly been good to me." I looked at the bruises on her knees, marks left by years of kneeling. There was grime lodged deep beneath her nails, the kind that comes from God knows where. Her once prized hair hung in a matted snarl, ends frayed into ragged, uneven strands. Beside me, Nina's fingers tightened around my sleeve, trembling ever so slightly. I gave her hand a light pat, signaling for her to get Chloe a glass of water. "Get up." I pulled my pant leg free from her grip. The coppery tang of blood mixed with the cloying sweetness of her cheap perfume, stinging my nose. "Your knees are already ruined, do you expect your mother, limping on that bad leg, to take care of you as well?" She flinched, and when she lifted her face, tears still clung to her lashes. But her gaze was clearer than it had been in the holding cell. Nina returned with a cup of warm water, only to find Chloe clutching my wrist, pressing my hand against her stomach. "Feel it. I'm pregnant. We could live together, the 3 of us, with the baby." "Enough." I yanked my hand back. The metal frame behind me scraped harshly against the cabinet, the sound grating in my ears. Inside the frame was a photo Nina and I had taken just last week. She was wearing the cream-colored sweater I'd given her, smiling like a stream breaking free in early spring. And here in front of me stood a woman carrying Ryan's child, asking me to take responsibility. "Ethan, I really know I was wrong," she said, lurching forward. Her knees hit the floor with a dull thud. Ryan sold me to those animals. I had no choice, no way out, I swear I had no way out. She clung to my pant leg, bowing her head again and again, her hair dragging through puddles on the floor until it stuck together in damp, filthy strands. I frowned and lifted my gaze toward Nina. Nina, could you wait for me in the car? I'll take care of this. She studied me for a moment before her lips curved into a gentle smile, her eyes warm and steady with trust. Only after she left did my expression turn to ice. Chloe. I bent down, gripping her chin hard enough to make her lift her head. You think I'm going to be like I was in the last life, drag you out of the gutter and spend the rest of mine cleaning up your mess? Her pupils shrank violently, a flicker of raw fear flashing across her face. You know? Know what? I let go, straightened, and pulled a folder from the drawer. Know that after you were reborn, you played the sweet, innocent act at the class reunion? Know you sent Ryan to report my family's supermarket for fire code violations? Or should I say? I slid out a yellowed medical report. That you never had postpartum depression at all, and those pills were just part of the lie Ryan told you to feed me? The paper fluttered down into her lap. She started laughing, shoulders shaking, fingertips tracing the frayed edges of the report again and again. So you knew everything. Then why save me? Does seeing me on my knees give you some kind of thrill? I saved Grace, I said evenly. She's treated me like a son. I tossed a plane ticket into her lap. Tomorrow's flight. Don't come back. Her fingers trembled around the ticket before she smiled again, lips curling in mockery. Ethan, you're still soft. You know damn well that even if I rotted in the gutter, you wouldn't really let me die. Because you're just like me, abandoned trash. Enough. My voice wasn't loud, but the cold in it cut deep. You can insult yourself all you want, but stop feeding off someone else's kindness. I checked your transfers. Every cent I sent Grace each month for making me cookies, you funneled straight to Ryan. Chloe's face drained of color. I pulled a recorder from my bag. Ryan's voice spilled out, laced with venom. You stupid bitch, go get money from Ethan, or I'll break your legs. You chose the pit yourself, I said. I pushed open the shop door, the rush of cold air sweeping away the stench of blood from inside. She stared at me, then suddenly snatched the fruit knife from the table and pressed it against her own throat. You think I won't do it? Living doesn't mean anything anyway. Go ahead, I cut her off, my tone blunt and cold. But if you die, that $200,000 debt you racked up out there? That'll all land on Grace. The knife clattered to the floor. Chloe collapsed into a heap, her hair falling forward to cover her face, hiding whatever was in her eyes. I left without another word, driving away with Nina. In the rearview mirror, I saw Chloe curled in the corner like a rain-soaked stray cat, staring blankly at the plane ticket in her hands. Nina's fingers slid into mine, her thumb tracing slow, tender circles in my palm. Do you regret it? She asked softly. I looked out at the sea of warm lights beyond the window, thinking of Grace's homemade cookies, of the cup of hot milk Nina always left for me in the lab. My fingers curled slightly, brushing against the silver band on Nina's ring finger, the one we'd picked out together a few months ago. Simple, unadorned, like the glass jars that had sat on the supermarket shelves for 20 years. No. I don't regret it. I turned my head to meet her gaze. Some people's cruelty is a bottomless pit. But some people's kindness is worth a lifetime in return. Love shone openly in her eyes, and I realized how much I liked that look, how much I loved the person behind it. I started the car again. In the mirror, Chloe finally picked up the ticket and limped away, vanishing around the corner. Snow began to fall. Nina turned on the heat, and the car's speakers filled with the bright notes of a Christmas song. I pressed my foot to the gas, watching her brow soften in the glow of the snow, and it struck me, true rebirth wasn't about revenge. It was about learning to plant flowers in the ruins. This time, I could finally say it without a trace of weight on my heart. Goodbye. Goodbye forever.